Welcome to the Campus Budget Module training being offered by the Budget Office. CBM is the Campus Budget Module where you're able to input your budget information. I'm going to sign into the system now. There are sign-in instructions on our YouTube channel, which we'll tell you more about at the end of this session. So what is CBM? CBM, the Campus Budget Module, is a PeopleSoft application that was developed here at Stony Brook. So it's a custom application which allows us to enter our appropriated funds and IDC budget information. We can also see our Stony Brook Foundation and other research foundation budgets all in one place, so you have an all funds view. The output from the budget module will go to the Form 1 process at SUNY, which loads your initial allocation at the beginning of each fiscal year. So as we go along, I'll explain the different features of the program. You will have a main menu, and once you have security access, you'll see budget and budget to actuals as two of the choices on this menu. We'll start with budget. There's a setup panel on the budget module, use, inquire, and report. And we're going to go into detail on these as the session continues. The setup panel is where the budget office enters all the information related to a different budget model. And budget models are fiscal years. So for instance, we just finished updating the 1920 budget module, which is module 2019, and that would be for fiscal year 1920, and that's what we're going to be using for our demonstration today. So on the setup panel, we can see what's related to that particular year, so the budget office is able to put in information related to this particular model. And you can also look at other models and see the history through the years. We have been using this program since the fiscal year 2001/2002. So model 2002 is our first year that we use the system. And these panels are all for budget office setup, but they allow you to see information that could be helpful to you as far as the history of how things were budgeted. So the first panel you probably would want to look at here is the OSE. And this shows us the various OSE categories based on union code that you're able to budget in the system. Fringe for model is another one you might look at. This shows the Research Foundation fringe rates based on model year. These particular panels are read-only, so you can look at the information, but you can't change it in any way. And another one that especially the hospital would look at would be the shift pay. The program is set up so that if there are different shift differentials that people deserve to have based on their job code, and again, we'll get into this in more detail a little bit later, this is the amounts that go with each of them, and again, they are model specific, and we check them every year when we set up the budget module. Another panel in the group is the use, which we're going to go into in very detailed in a little while. As I said, we can do appropriated fund accounts and IDC accounts. IFR are part of appropriated funds, but they have some special rules related to revenue and cash, so we have them as a special screen. CPMP is housed in this as well. And again, we've got the Research Foundation and some external accounts and SBF Foundation as well. And we will go into some of these a little bit later. So the point of this program is to enter your information after you've developed your budget. for what you are asking for from SUNY for the following year. And each area, VP area or unit, will have to tie into the targets that they've been given for the appropriated funds. Next panel in the group is Inquire. This particular one allows you, if you go to account salary detail, to see groups of, to see all the employees paid from a particular account. And there's various ways to navigate in the system, which we will try to show you as we go along. So for instance, if I go to account salary detail and I put in an account number, and I'm going to show you another way to get here as well, and I click search, you'll see the people who are paid from this particular account, and a little bit later we're going to show you how to drill down to those. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Inquire or Rollup. Another area of our menu is Budget, Inquire, or Rollup. And this is where you can see the allocation targets that your particular area should tie into. So for instance, the College of Arts and Sciences in this example has $4 million allocation target. Right now they've budgeted a little over $1 million, and so they've still got $2.9 million to budget. When they're completely done budgeting for the year and ready for the program to be closed, this number on the right here where it says undistributed total, that should be 0. Meaning your allocation and your budgeted totals are equal to each other. You can move down to an account from this as well. Whenever you see something like this, where it looks like a little piece of paper with a pointer to it, this means there's a related link. And you can go to the account. Now, at most places, if you know the account number, you put it in. If you're not sure and you want to put in a portion of the account title, you can put that in and hit the search bar. And just wanted to let you know that all the different search areas work similar to this. Now it's going to show me all the accounts that start with an A. I want to point out that these are the accounts that I have access to. So each of you will be set up with your own personal security based on what your VP coordinator has said you should have access to. And that's one of the beauties of the program, is that we can make sure that you are only able to see the accounts you should see, since we've got very confidential data in here related to salaries and other information. So I've decided that I want to look at an art account, so I'll click on art. And I am now at the part of the program where we're going to go over each of the panels in this group and let you know how you would budget them. And then we will get back to budgeting by employee, show you some of the reports that we have, and continue from there.
Next, we will review budgeting appropriated fund accounts for state, dorm, hospital, and veterans home. As was shown, one way to reach this panel is to go through the Budget, Inquire, Organizational Rollup panel. The other way, if you go back to Main Menu and go to Budget, Use, and select Aaf Account Distribution. Enter your model ID number and the account number, and then select Search. The Aaf Account Distribution will display a series of panels related to your account. The first panel, Aaf Account Summary, is a display-only panel that shows the summary of account data by major object of expense categories, which are also known as GL classes. This panel is updated in real time after changes are made to the account data in the OSC and OTPS panels, which I'll get to in a little bit. It shows a roll-up of PSR, PST, and OTPS totals. PSR means Personnel Service Regular employees, PST means the temporary employees, and OTPS means Other Than Personnel Services. This panel shows the model ID, the fiscal year, the account number, and the account name at the top. Then it shows 4 columns. You have the first one, which is initial, which is what was budgeted last year and sent to SUNY in the Form 1 process. This is locked to all users. The next one is the current, which is what actually happened. The third one over is the proposed, which is what the users work on when they're budgeting for the new fiscal year. And then the last column is the out year, which is showing budgeting for 1 more year out. There's a documentation link at the top here that will bring you to the CBM manual on the Budget Office website. This is a great educational tool to help with your budgeting in CBM. On this page, you will find the step-by-step guide to running and printing your reports, the print manual here, the complete user's manual, which is available to you in either a Word document or as a PDF. And this manual is also broken out into individual chapters in case you didn't want to have to print or read the 158-page manual. On this Aaf Account Summary panel is also a new window link. This is another useful tool if you want to take a look at how your account was budgeted in prior model years. So for example, if I wanted to look at 2019 for my account, I can do so, and I can tab back and forth between model 2019 and model 2020 to compare how this account was budgeted. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier that the account number is shown at the top of this panel. Well, right next to it is that little icon with the red arrow. If you click on it and select Account Salary Detail, you can see the full list of employees that are budgeted on this particular account. The account salary detail shows the employee ID, the employee's name, whether they are regular, full-time, or temporary employees, what percentage of their salary is budgeted against this particular account, what the FTE is, and their salary amount. This account only shows 4 lines at the moment, but there could be a lot more employees budgeted. So to see the full list, you can select View All if it is available to you to see all employees. Or you can also use the left and right arrows to jump to the next grouping if needed. You can also export this entire grid into Excel. Next to the employee ID is that little icon with the red arrow again. If you select this, you can drill right into the individual employee's record, which we will get to later. Let's go back to the Aaf Account Summary panel. Okay, so we pretty much covered the Aaf Account Summary panel, so we're going to go to the next panel, which is the Aaf Account Payroll panel. The Account Payroll panel is another display-only panel that shows a summary of payroll data by GL class. This panel is updated in real time after changes are made to the account data in the Osc panel. The information you see on this panel comes from the employee record and from the Osc panel, which we will get to shortly. To see the full list of the GL classes, right now there's only 4 displayed, but if you wanted to see more, you can select View All or use the right and left arrows to jump to the next grouping. You can also sort your data here by selecting any of the column headers. So let's say, for example, I wanted to look at proposed, but I wanted to see the dollar amounts in the smallest amount to largest. If I click on it, now it's sorted so that I see $7,000 at the top and the $631,000 at the bottom. And if I click again, the order is reversed. Another way to sort is to select one of the options here in the sort order drop-down. And again, that budget documentation link is here for your convenience. The next panel is the Aaf Account FTE. This again is a display-only panel, and it groups the GL classes into instructional and non-instructional employees, showing your FTE for each of those columns, the initial, current, proposed, and the out year. And now let's go to the Account Osc panel. The Account Osc panel is used to input salary expenses that are budgeted in aggregate by account. You would use this panel to budget as lump sum rather than by employee. So for example, if you have student assistants, you would budget as a whole rather than by individual assistant. To do so, first select the View All to see the entire list of GL classes. There's only 3 on this account. If you don't see the GL class that you need, and you need to add a new row, select the plus button to add your new row, and enter the GL class code in the box here. Now, if you don't know the code, select the magnifying glass, and you will see the full list available for payroll. And it's broken out, if you scroll a little, by PS, and further down if you scroll by TS. Now, rather than searching through this entire list and having to scroll down, if you go to the description box and type in part of the description for the GL class that you need, it would help you to find your GL class code much easier. So for example, if I type in student and hit look up, I can find the GL class for my student assistants. Select it. And by doing so, the code is now populated in the box. The GL class name is automatically populated. The expense type is populated. And it's showing that it's a TS code. Now if you go over to the proposed box, you can enter your dollar amount that you're budgeting. And if you tab off, notice at the bottom here that your total has filled in for you. There's an OSC notes box here for your convenience if you need to add a comment. And if you scroll down a little bit more, don't forget to save after you make any changes. Now, if you find that you don't need one of these GL classes and you want to remove this line, just simply select the minus button. It'll ask you to confirm you want to delete. Click OK, and now your row is deleted. And again, don't forget to save. Next, let's look at the account OTPS panel. It's a similar setup to the OSC panel, except that this is where you would budget your other than personnel services, your OTPS budgeting. So again, if you need to add a row, select that plus button. And let's say we need to budget for equipment. We'll type in equipment and select lookup. And there's my GL class. And once again, the code is populated. The GL class name is automatically populated, the expense type, and now in the proposed column, since that's what we are budgeting against, put in your dollar amount. And if you tab off, your dollar amount is now shown in the subtotal. And again, here is an OTPS notes box for you to use for any comments or notes that you need. This box is larger than the OSC box. This box holds about 2.5 pages worth of information. So if by chance you run out of space in that box on the OSC panel, feel free to jump over to this OTPS box to continue adding your notes. And of course, if you need to remove a line, select that subtraction button, click OK. And don't forget to save. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about printing reports in CBM. For the step-by-step guide, please refer to either the print manual I mentioned earlier on the Budget Office website, which is right here, or check out the video on our office's YouTube channel. What I will show you here are some of the report samples to give you an idea of what the most frequently used reports are, used for. Before I do that, I want to mention that there's a View Report Sample link on the website as well. So once again, on this campus budget module manual page, if you go to View Report Samples, there is an entire list of PDF samples to give you a better idea of what each report is used for. Okay. Let's go back to main menu in CBM for a moment. If I select Budget, Report, I'll see a full list of reports available to me based on my security access in CBM. The most frequently used reports are report number 1, which is the account detail, report 2, which is account summaries, and report 4, employee by distribution. Here is an example of report 1, account detail. This report shows your budgeted expenses for a particular account, broken out by the individual current, proposed, and out year columns. It also shows employees that are budgeted on this particular account. The next report sample is Report 2, Account Summaries. This report shows account details that are for all accounts in a particular department. So in this particular report, I'm looking at all of the accounts and the account information that are for State Fund 10 that roll up to a College of Arts and Sciences. And on this report, we can see the FTE total, allocation, if there's any PSR, TS, OTPS. If this were an IFR report, we would see any overhead or fringe. If there's any agency, and then at the very end, we would see the balance for each of these accounts. And the last report sample, Report 4, Employees by Distribution, shows you the employee details budgeted on a particular account. So here's our account, and here are our employees, and then it shows their employee IDs, their line numbers, their salary information, if there's any additional pay, like UUP location pay, their FTE, what their union code is, and then their overall distribution total. Next, we will go into budgeting employees.
We're going to talk about the different types of budgeting for employees that are able to be done in CBM. What I want to start by talking about is what is loaded in CBM when you first get into the system each year. So in order to make things easier so that you don't have to input all of your employees that currently work in your department, we do a data load, which is a snapshot of HR data done at a particular time each year. This load takes a couple of weeks to complete, so when you first get into CBM at the beginning of a budget cycle, the employees from about 2 to 3 weeks previously that were on the system will all be loaded in CBM for you. And they will have their EMPL ID, the same that you see in the HR system, and as much information as we were able to load from the HR system. And then your charge is to budget these employees for how you want them to be in the next fiscal year. So for instance, if someone is going to be getting a particular salary increase, you would budget that. If somebody is retiring, you would budget that. If somebody is being replaced, you could probably leave it as it is, but maybe change the name, or else if they're getting a different salary, update the salary. And we'll go on with other examples as we go through talking about this. So let's take a look at this panel here. There's a couple different ways to get to the employee. You can do use employee information and get there that way if you know the employee's name or ID. The way that we got to this panel here was to do budget, Inquire, and then we did account salary detail, and we put in the account number, and this gives us all the employees that are paid from this particular account. So let's take a look at a sample of some types of employees and go over the employee record. So again, I can drill down to the employee using this link. And if I go to employee detail, which is the first panel in the group. What I'm going to see is what has been loaded for this employee. Now, I'm in a test database so that I'm not showing any real data. So what I'm going to show you here is that this is a dummy EMPL ID that I made up. Normally, you would see the 9-digit EMPL ID that HR has. The model, meaning the fiscal year that we're budgeting, shows 2020, since we're doing 1920. And here's the link to the budget documentation that was discussed previously. This field is no longer used, Social Security number, but it's just on here as a placeholder. We don't store these in the system. And then we've got the name field here. Now, even if you are creating an employee who you hope to budget next year, we recommend that you don't keep this field blank, because a lot of our reports show the field if you want to sort on things. So if you're going to be doing a new hire, you could put in here hire, comma, administrative assistant or whatever. We're also able to show you, you're able to put in whether an employee is a regular or a temporary employee, and that's very important. When we were showing you the summary screens that showed PSR and TS, anybody who's a regular employee will be captured in the PS, meaning Personnel Services Regular, and anybody who's temporary will be captured in the Temporary Services. In addition, the regular employee's FTE will be counted, which is a very important criteria for SUNY. The next field here is the position, also known as the line number. And this comes in from HR. It's 5 digits with 3 zeros on the end. That is in the system. We have a field over here called day, evening, and night, the shift field, which I'll explain in a few minutes. It's used sometimes for different job codes that get a shift differential. And I had shown you in the setup panel where you could see the amounts for that. The program will automatically put those in. So if a nurse that works in your area was a day employee and is shifting to evening, and you click evening, based on the job code, it'll automatically add in a differential for the evening work. We also have job code. This is a very important field. First, I'll talk about the type. As I had told you, we can budget appropriated funds, and we can budget research foundation, which includes IDC. So it's really important, if you're putting a job code in, to put the correct one. This would be on employees that you're adding. The ones from the system come in the way they should. And when you are adding an employee that you hope to hire in the future, it's very important that you pick a job code that's as close to what you really want to hire as possible, and we will go over that in a few moments. So based on the job code that's entered here, all this related information gets populated. The job title, the salary plan, what kind of classification they are in, the salary grade, the union code, and the related name of the union, and also the compensation frequency. So just by changing this, and we'll do that in a few moments, you'll see how all of this gets populated. Also on this panel, you can see who was the last person who modified this record and the date that they did. And you can see the source and the date loaded. Again, since this is a test database, there's nothing here. But in the real CBM, when you first get into it, you'll see the date that we loaded the data for you and the source of that data. So whether it came from the HR appropriated funds or it was an RF, Research Foundation, you'll get all of that information in there. The next panel in this group is salary distribution. And in this particular case, I've chosen an employee who is paid from one account. Her annual salary is $68,000. She has one FTE. So this one account shows her salary, that it goes 100% to that account. We have a choice here where we can make a person instructional or non-instructional. So this person was a staff assistant, so that's a non-instructional, but this can be changed. If you need to get out of this, you click the cancel button and you can get out of this. There's the ability to program 4 different accounts for appropriated funds and 8 accounts altogether. So sometimes people are split between appropriated and research foundation. And the program will automatically calculate if fringe is related, if there's any kind of agency fees, etc., and also the FTE. So this is a very straightforward employee paid from one account, total AF salary. Just a mention of what fixed means. Any of the West Campus accounts will have fixed as their expense type. Over at the hospital, they've got different employees that are sometimes considered variable, meaning that the amount of hours they need for that employee is based on the number of tests run in the department or the number of patients, so it's called a variable employee type, and we take care of that as well when we load up CBM, and as they add new employees, that has to be taken care of. So if I'm done budgeting this, I can close it out. And I'm back to where I came in from. So let's take a look at the next employee in this group so that I can show you the rest of the panels and the employee panels. Again, I'll go to employee detail. Now, this particular employee is tenure-track faculty, so you'll see that they would be shown in the salary distribution as an instructional. See over here. So this particular employee is paid from 2 accounts. So you can see the comp rate up here is $130,000, 50% to one account and 50% to the other. One is art, one is music. So the amount charged to each account is $65,000. If we take a look at the OSE panel, OSE on employee is the additional salary payments that people get based on their different job codes or things that are put into the system. So here's where, if you, not everything is being shown at this point. So if we do view all, we can see everything. And let me start out with, down at the bottom, UUP location pay. Many job titles are many jobs are entitled to UUP location pay. At the current time, it's $3,026. This person is paid from 2 accounts, so the program automatically splits it 50-50 between the 2 accounts because that's the same ratio as their salary. If I had changed the salary to be 60-40, and tabbing off the field or saving are the ways that the dollars will actually change. And if I look at OSE now, you can see that my UUP is now split the same way that my salary was, 40-60, so that it is spread correctly between the 2 accounts that the person is paid from. This employee also has a couple of additional salary payments. Perhaps the person is the chair of a department, so they have an additional compensation. We load these in from HR if they're available, but if you know of someone who's changing and you want to add some additional compensation, if you go to the magnifying glass, you've got 2 choices, additional compensation or lump sum adjustment. Additional compensation, whatever number you put in here, it will split it between the accounts pro rata, meaning exactly the way they were budgeted. So in this case, $10,000 is $4,000 and $6,000. Back when the person was 50-50, it was $5,000 and $5,000. The other situation is a lump sum adjustment, and in this case, you're able to put in the account yourself that you want the person to get it from. So in this case, it might be a situation where somebody is going to a new department, but they're going to give a little extra service to their old department in the interim of someone else being hired, so that department is going to pay them $2,000. So you have to actually put the account in here, and if it's an IFR account that has fringe, you would add the fringe as well. And it's totally up to you to put in the amount yourself of what, and the accounts. It doesn't spread it automatically. And if you put $2,000 in here and you don't put anything in here, or you don't put anything that adds up to $2,000, you will get an error when you try to save. So there are certain edits on the fields that happen either as you leave the field or tab off or whatever. What I want to talk about before we end talking about this employee is, let's suppose you want to zero out an employee. We have someone on the staff who they're leaving and they're not being refilled. If they're being refilled, let me go to that for a moment, you can actually just change the name and say replacement for John Anderson or something like that. So you'd put replacement, comma, John Anderson. This way you have this information on your reports. Or you can clone John Anderson and make a new record. This way you get a different EMPL ID. There's various ways to do things, and usually we leave it up to the department, what makes sense, what's consistent, what charge have they been given from their VP coordinator. But let's suppose that this particular person is leaving the university and I don't have the funds to rehire. So in order to make sure they're totally zeroed out in CBM, I'm going to put a 0 in their comp rate. I'm going to put a 0 in their FTE. And I'm going to put a 0 in the percents that they're spread. And I caution you to really make sure you do this, especially the FTE. I have seen cases where the salary is zeroed out, but the FTE isn't. And then when we go to get the file ready for SUNY, we have to make changes because the file won't be accepted. So now if I look at OSE, you can see that even though there's a $10,000 for PS for additional comp in here, there's nothing budgeted. But my PS adjustment is still here because I put that in manually and I have to take it out manually. So we have a panel here which shows you what's budgeted on somebody before you leave the account, and so it's always a good idea to take a look. So as you can see, everything is zeroed out except for the $2,000 in in adjustment, and so I would have to take that out myself. It doesn't hurt to take this out either, just to be nice and clean with the whole thing. And then if I look at all salary by account, everything's 0. I can save this employee. We also have a notes field here where you could put in what you're doing. So for instance, if it turned out that I want to say this person's replacing somebody else, but they'll only be here for half a year, and even though the complete salary's here, I'm adjusting it for the other half, they won't be here or whatever. All these notes are very important, and they will show up on report number 1 at the end of the report. And that report was demonstrated a little bit earlier in this demonstration. Another situation to tell you about as far as employees will be this next employee that I go to. And I can go straight to salary distribution if I know that's what I need to look at. So this employee is one FTE, two different accounts, I'm sorry, the same account, but why do I need to have two lines? The reason I need to have two lines is because the person has two different categories as far as their job is concerned. So they've got an instructional portion and a non-instructional portion. This is usually somebody who is the department chair and teaches classes as well. So the program allows you to put in that information so that the proper instructional or non-instructional categories are budgeted and sent up to SUNY. So that's very important to think about. And then the rest is pretty similar to what we've been talking about as we've been going along. The last employee type I want to show you is how you budget your adjuncts. You can budget teaching assistants and graduate assistants and also adjuncts using the methods I'm going to tell you about now. What I also want to let you know is that, as was mentioned previously, student assistants are budgeted in aggregate on the account, not by individual employee. So I have an art adjunct that I had budgeted last year. Let's say I can bring it in and take a look at it. So let me give you the information, and we send this out every year when we start with the budget. It will be in your opening letter. It'll be on our website, and if you come to training, you'll hear about it in training. If you have training with your VP coordinator, you will hear it as well. If you're going to budget adjuncts, we want you to use the regular job code. That's important. So you have to make sure you do regular, not temporary. Again, this will be an error that will be sent out to the area if it isn't budgeted this way. So for adjuncts, you'll do regular, and you'll do job code 1136. What we allow to be done for adjuncts, TAs, and GAs is, even though they're budgeted on the employee record, we let you do a whole group of them at once. So since they're part-time, most of them, they don't get location pay even though they're in Union 08. So that's why this job code is very important to use. So if I look at the salary distribution, what I'm able to do is there'll be a comp rate that we're given by the provost office each year, which is the comp rate for the adjuncts. The last time we budgeted, it was $50,000. The GAs and TAs were $19,360. Again, this will be given to you each time at the beginning of the year when we open the system. Now, normally, the FTE doesn't matter to me as much as how much money do I have to budget. So what you can do is you can use this Calculate AF FTE button. You can put in the amount of money that you are able to spend on your adjuncts this year, and then click OK. It will automatically figure out the FTE for you. And that's very important to have the right FTE number, so it'll figure it out based on this. When you get to the point where you're going to budget the GAs and TAs, you want to make sure you budget them temporary, not regular, because their FTE isn't counted in the program currently. And you want to use job code 0492 for the TAs and 0552 for the GAs. Again, all this information will be sent to you and will be available on our website as well. Next, I'm going to talk about situations where you need to change, add, or modify in some way employees that were loaded with the data load. And again, I told you usually the data is a few weeks old. Last year we opened November 20th, and I believe the data was from sometime in October. So in between when the system opens and your budgeting, or when the load took place, new employees could have come into your area. So let's suppose you need to add a new employee. What you'll do is go to the Use menu. You'll go to Employee Information. Now, if you simply want to look at an existing employee, you can either put in their employee ID or their name. But if you want to add a new employee, you click on this button. It'll default to the model that we're using at this point in time, and that's the only model that's unlocked. So I'm in a test system, as I mentioned. You would, if you know a new employee that came into the system in between when the system was loaded and today, you would get their EMPL ID from HR, and you would put that in the system. So again, I have dummy IDs because I'm not in the real system. So if I put in this ID and click Add, it's going to give me the information that's in the HR system, and it's going to allow me to then put in the salary distribution information as I need to. So I'm going to go back and show you that one more time, and I'm going to use last year's model just for a moment. So this time I'm going to go to Add a New Value, and I'm going to just put this where you put in a real ID and click Add. And it's going to give me whatever information was in the HR system. So I'm going to see the person's name, the job code. I'll see their salary. And now it's up to me to put in the FTE and put in the account that they're paid from and save that information. And the nice part is, once I do this, if there's location pay or anything else, it will be automatically put into the system based on the job information that was in there. So you see, as soon as I put in FTE, what got populated, and now if I put in an account, and again, this person is non-instructional, and I'll put in, now if you notice up here, there's nothing in the middle right here. Once I make this 100% and tab off the field, it not only put in the $70,000 for the base salary, but it put in the UUP location pay, because this particular person is in the professional United University Professionals Union. I want to tell you a preview coming soon to CBM. We're going to be loading the expected contractual salary increases for appropriated funds employees. And so we're going to have another column here which will show what the 2% or 1% or whatever percent increase is estimated to be. So we'll have a salary column, we'll have an estimated CSI column, and then we'll have other salary expenses, as I showed you previously. So the projection for the CSIs will be in here. Again, it's just an estimate, but we feel it will just help with the budgeting. This way you'll see the change that will be instituted on the employee, not just on the whole account in aggregate. So that's something else that we are able to add to the system. All right. The next thing I'd like to talk about is, we talked about putting in a real employee that got hired after the system opened. You can also, if you have a situation, now sometimes it's going to remind you to save. I think it might in this case, but so I just want to tell you, if you should really save now and then yourself, because it doesn't always remind you. The other thing I want to mention is, if you ever just decide not to save what you're working on, we've got an exit button down here. And the save button is a little bit further down. So I like to save periodically. All right. So now I'm going to go to Use, and I'm going to go Employee Information, and it's asking me if I want to save. I'll say no. And I'm going to go to Add a New Value. Again, I'm going to go to 2019 just for my demo. Now this time, I had budgeted someone last year, and I wasn't able to hire them. But I need to try to hire them again this year. So they didn't come in with the data load, because they're not a real person yet. They didn't come in from my stuff from last year, because we give you a brand new snapshot each year. So if I put in their EMPL ID, and in this case it'll probably start with a B or a C, and if I add this employee, it'll show me whatever I put in last year. Again, my job code, all that information. And then I have to go to this panel again, take a look. Do I still want this same comp rate? Do I want to make any changes? And again, I can save it. The last case would be if you have a brand new person that you want to hire. And so what you want to do is the next case will be where you have a situation where you want to budget for someone that you're planning to hire this year, that you have enough funding for. They're not loaded in the data load because they don't exist yet, and they're not someone you had on your model last year because you didn't know you'd have the funding. So in this case, when you do add a new value, leave the word new in here, click the add button, and after you put the information, the system will generate an EMPL ID for you, and it will start with a B. So again, make sure you put a name so that you can look for it in your reports. I'm going to put to be TBA or to be hired staff. Again, it's very important to choose the correct job code. I know this will be a regular employee. There'll be appropriated funds. So the next place I want to go is here. Now, there are thousands of job codes. So you're probably not going to know the exact number of the job code. You may. So the system allows you to put in a part of the name of the job code. So if I just put staff, it'll give me anything that starts with the word staff. But let's suppose I know staff is in it somehow, but maybe not at the beginning. If you put the percent sign, that's considered a wild card. And when you do a lookup, it's going to show me anything that has the word staff any place in the name. So you see now I have administrative staff assistant, senior staff, in addition to the staff that I had previously. So really important to choose the correct job code. It goes in here, and when it goes in, all these other things come with it as far as the grade and everything else. Okay, so I've told you how to add a new employee. That's already in the system. I've told you how to copy an employee from last year's model. I've showed you how to put in a new person to be hired. The last situation would be someone who's transferring from another department. And in this case, you don't want to add them in CBM. They're already here if they came in on the data load. So you want to get them transferred to your account. So if they're already on another account, you're not going to be able to see them in CBM because you won't have the security. So you have to first see if your VP coordinator can see them. So for instance, if somebody is transferring from the music department to the art department and you only have access to the music department, your VP coordinator could make that change for you. in a situation where somebody's changing from School of Medicine to an area in the provost department, neither person would have the security to make the change because they cross over, so the budget office would be asked to take care of that for you. So we just really make the caution that you should not add another employee with a dummy ID. We want to have the real EMPL IDs with the real person and the real situation of what's going to be happening. Okay. Just very quickly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the other types of accounts that you can budget in the system. We've been showing you everything with appropriated fund accounts. Real quick, I want to show you the IFR accounts. And it's very similar. This also goes up to SUNY in our budget when we submit Form 1. And I'm going to put in an account number. Oops. Oh, sorry, typo. Okay, so the first thing I want to say that I forgot to mention previously, coming soon to CBM, we're going to have a fifth column on here. So in addition to budgeting for your proposed and 1 year out, you're going to be able to budget for another year out and see it here, all in one place. So right now you can budget for the next year out, but you don't see them all together, and you'll be able to. So for instance, this would be the second year out, so it would say 2021/2022. So this is something that will be coming soon to enable being able to look out a couple extra years. So this panel is very similar to what we saw in the appropriated funds. Down here we've got PS regular, temporary, OTPS, and that's a total of our allocation. But what's different is two different pieces. First of all, there's a revenue piece, because in IFR you have to have revenue to cover the allocation that you request, and some of these accounts are assessed overhead and fringe benefits. So you have to have enough to take care of the allocation as well as these additional costs. So this account balance down here is very important. When you're done budgeting, if this is less than a 0, you will not be able to save your file. So let's give an example. The other and I'll tell you the other panel that's in here that's a little bit different. So as you can see, I have equipment and office supplies in here. They were budgeted last year, but the program did not bring in anything for this year. It's up to us to budget it. Now, one thing I want to mention, we had spoken previously about the fact that if you want to get rid of a row, you can click on the minus button. One caveat is if there's anything in the previous models, if you click on the minus button and you say you'd like to delete it, you're going to get an error. It's saying that this exists on a related model and may not be deleted or changed. So if you don't want anything here, you just leave a 0, and next year it won't be copied forward for you. Now let's suppose my equipment or my office supplies is going to be $60,000. So I had revenue of $67,000. I have $60,000. There isn't overhead or fringe assessed on this particular account, so I'm good. I would be able to save it. But let's suppose I put $80,000. Now my account is in a negative. If I try to save this, I'm going to get a message telling me that my data has not been saved. I am trying to budget a deficit. And then it pops me right to the revenue page. And the revenue page is where you put in the revenue you expect for the new year, 1920. There's also a part on here which shows you what your balance was as of October 31st, and whether you expect additional collections or expenditures. You would put here, put any notes related to this, and this amount shows down here. This is the revenue you expect, this is the cash position you expect to have as of June 30th of the year we're in, and then above it is the revenue. So if I was to put some revenue amounts in here, and then this became a positive, let's suppose I put 20,000 and look at my summary. Now I'm good to go. In this case, I got some overhead assessed because of the additional revenue, and now I would be able to save this record. Last type of a record I'm going to show you is an IDC, indirect cost support. Again, we've got a payroll summary, OSE, OTPS. A little bit different on this page. Everything that you budget for payroll will have fringe assessed on it. And when I had showed you the setup panel, it had the fringe rates, and that's how all of this is assessed. So that's a little bit different than we've seen before. If you budget any OSE that has fringe related to it, so for instance, if I do temporary salary pool, let's suppose these are the increases I expect to have, and it's $70,000. When I tab off the field, it'll also put the fringe amount related to that. So the program will take care of that for you automatically. All right, the last area I'm going to show for this part of this demonstration would be from our main menu is budgets to actuals. This is a new group of panels that was developed a few years ago, and this particular group gives you CBM information and also real expenditure information that was taken in from the finance system when CBM was loaded. So this is an account, the ART account. Again, this is all test data. None of this is real. We have loaded years that are completed. So when we're budgeting for 1920, 1819 is still happening. So we have the last three completed years are 1516, 1617, and 1718. So we've loaded what's in the HR system and what's in the finance system related to the actual PS, TS, OTPS, and totals for all the different accounts in the area. It can be either by account or by the whole area. And then we average these expenses, and we show you what you budgeted last year and what's budgeted this year as far as your 2020 budget is concerned. And then we give you places to budget what you forecast for next year and the year after. And we give you a little comment field where you can put in a note. And once the note is filled, you can see that it shows that it's filled. You can also put a note for the entire account. And this is, again, is one of those long notes fields where you can pretty much write for about 2.5 pages. So each account, as it's updated in CBM, automatically gets updated here. but this actual information comes in once at the beginning of the budget year, and then it is static for the rest of the budget process for that year. So the following year, three additional years will be loaded, with the most complete year being the highest year. The other panel group in here is Inquire. And in this particular case, you look at things by the department or the VP area. It can't be looked at by individual accounts. So if you have access to a group of accounts, which all the security in CBM allows, you'll be able to take a look. So the first is our totals panel. So this is the information we talked about in the last panels that I showed you, but now you can see the totals for state, IFR, SUTRA, IDC. If there had been any of these others, they would come. And again, you'd see what was budgeted, what was forecast. And then you can look at the individual pieces that make everything up. So what's my total for state, SUTRA, et cetera, in PS, TS, OTPS, FTE, and also revenue, if it's an IFR account or a SUTRA account, or a HIFR-IFR, or if this happened to have a dorm IFR as well. There is a report out on Svu Reporting which shows all the output of this, and it's in the budget management directory, so that's something you might want to look at as well.
The last thing I want to talk briefly about is our budget office website. If you go to www.stonybrook.edu/budget office, you will see our website. But more importantly, if you go to developing your budget, there's information on this page related to CBM. So for example, there is a brief little blurb up here about what CBM is. There is a link to directly access the CBM login page. For VP coordinators, if you have an employee in your department that needs security access, either they're a new employee and needs new access, or they're existing employees and they need an update to their existing access, there is the CBM security access form here. And then towards the bottom here, if you click on manual, it brings you right to that manual page again. One thing that I didn't mention earlier, on this manual page, if you scroll to the very bottom, it's one of the chapters. It's chapter 11. It's called Need Help? Who to Contact for Assistance. If you go into this page, it will show you your contacts, depending on your area. If you need help troubleshooting, if you need help, you forgot your password, so there's information on here on how to contact computer accounts. For instance, if you have a PeopleSoft admin password issue, if you have technical questions, who to contact, you can contact client support. And it's broken out by if you're on West Campus, if you're in the medical center, or if you're in the health sciences center, or if you're over at the university hospital. The other thing I want to show you, if we go back to our website and go to managing your budget, there is a link here that directs you right to the Budget Office YouTube channel. The official name is SBU Budget Office e-learning channel. So if you happen to be in YouTube, you can just do a search for SBU Budget Office and our channel will come right up. But on this Managing Your Budget page, our featured video for right now is the Printing CBM Reports. And this is what I mentioned earlier about giving you a step-by-step video tutorial on how to run and print your reports in CBM. That's all for today's training. Thank you for joining us, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the budget office. Thank you.